that deserve airing in our community. I guess it's still not too late to be out knocking on doors. Okay, we're not going to go as long as the Board of Supervisors usually goes tonight. This is going to be a 15-minute session, and I'll turn it back over to Bruce DuPoit for that purpose.
Thanks very much. I'm dying to make a joke about how we're going to need to bus our own dishes and plates tonight because of, but no, I'm just not going to do that. I know, that's a terrible thing to say. How could I even contemplate? That's terrible. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the candidates for Board of Supervisors Chair, Corey Stewart and Sharon Pendon. I have in my hand questions that have been submitted. These are the best of the best, called by the panel that has worked overtime to bring us some great questions. What we're going to do is opening statements, followed by as many of these questions as we have time for. The opening statements will be 3 minutes. When we get into the submitted questions, it'll be 2-minute responses for each candidate, 1-minute rebuttal for each candidate. Section 3 of the encounter will involve a question that each candidate can pose to his or her opponent, and we'll wrap it up with 3-minute closing statements. Again, we won't get to all these questions. We'll get to as many as we have time for. We're going to do the statements kind of in a alphabetical order way, opening statements, 3 minutes each. Sharon Pendon, you're up first.
Thank you for coming. I am a more than 20-year resident of Prince William County. I am former county attorney. Prince William County is not a way station for me. It is my home. Public servants should not put their personal ambitions before the progress of Prince William County. We need to deal with difficult issues, frankly and directly, and in a way which addresses those issues but does not divide our community. I will be that kind of leader for Prince William County. We must commit to a new way. Last year, a local newspaper predicted that the county would be in for tumultuous times if Corey was elected chairman. What a gross understatement that was. Here we are a year later, and none of the problems facing Prince William County have been resolved. Worse yet, they're not even on track. Instead, we have a media-crazed chairman stirring people up into hateful divisiveness without offering a single solution. The chairman has delayed any action on every critical issue, except immigration, until after the election. I can only imagine what kind of suspense he can keep us in for the next 4 years. Let's get work now on making the daily lives of Prince William County residents better. Let's give the citizens what they want, relief from everyday problems, and hope for a better tomorrow for their families and friends. Let's get citizens out of traffic gridlock, our children out of overcrowded schools taught by overworked and underpaid teachers, and provide more clean, safe, open spaces to take our families to enjoy. The hardworking people in Prince William have told us they want to control growth. They want their tax dollars used wisely, but they have told us equally clearly they're willing to pay for the things that are important to them. My opponent seeks to use anger with growth, traffic, illegal immigration to win election. I want to channel that anger into solutions. We need more mass transportation options and new roads, more open space and better air and water quality, more teachers who are adequately compensated, and more schools. We need to confront illegal immigration effectively. I'm committed to doing so. We need to work with businesses, with citizens, with the state and federal government, with other localities in this region. I have done that before. I did it long before the chairman even moved to Prince William County. I am committed to working cooperatively to resolve those various serious issues that we have. My campaign offers solutions, not slogans. We are a mature county. We are the second largest in the Commonwealth. We are the 7th wealthiest county in the nation. We need experienced leadership.
Mr. Stewart, 3 minutes for opening statement.
Thank you, everyone, and welcome. Now, be absolutely honest with me here. How many people in this room are undecided about this race? Raise your hand.
That's a good question.
Okay, we got, all right, for those 3 people, my comments are addressed to you. I'm Corey Stewart. I was elected in a special election just about 11 months ago. I live with my wife, Maria. We've been married since 1994, and we've got two children, both of whom attend public school. When I was elected 10 months ago, we had runaway growth. In 2006, the Board of County Supervisors approved a full 4,800 units. When I became chairman, I worked with Supervisor Wally Covington, passed unanimously a zoning moratorium, essentially what it was, and we cut that number down to less than 300 this year. On the budget, we started, when I became chairman, there was an $18 million hole in the budget. We worked, we scraped, we saved. Mr. Jenkins and I, Mr. Noe was especially helpful in creating a budget compromise and a solution. And what was that? A flat tax bill for the first time in many, many years. But despite that, despite the fact that the average tax burden went down a little bit, we added 30 new firefighters, 20 new police officers, we increased average teacher salaries by 4.9%, and we financed most of our 2006 road bond. On transportation, not only did we pass the transportation road bond, but for the first time, we'd been working for decades, actually, to get transportation impact fees. And I reached across the party lines with Governor Kane and with an independent in Loudoun County, Scott York, and together we were able to, for the first time, get past the legislature transportation impact fees so that developers pay fees on developments that were approved long ago. And finally, on illegal immigration. This is a problem that's been growing in our community. This isn't a made-up problem. It wasn't made up by John Sturp. It wasn't made up by me. It was something that was recognized by all of you. It was something that was recognized by the grassroots. And we said we're going to deal with it. We tried to work on the effects of illegal immigration, but it's very difficult. So we decided what we were going to do was attack the root cause, and that is illegal immigration itself. And that passed unanimously as well. Yes, it's been tumultuous, but sometimes I feel you need to rock the boat. You have to butt a few heads, and you need to shake things up to get things done and to change direction. And that's what I've done in my short 11 months as chairman. Thank you.
You can stay. Just a couple quick reminders from the first session, because memories are short, or maybe we have some new people here. Turn your cell phones off or set them to stun. Let's hold our applause to the end. And candidates, the color-coded indicators in the front will be pink for green for 2 minutes left, yellow for 1 minute left, and pink or fuchsia for stop. Time for candidates submitted from the public, and we're going to toggle it back and forth. So, Mr. Stewart, starting with you, 2 minutes for your first crack at this question. What are your top 3 priorities as board chairman, and how will you work with your fellow board members to accomplish these priorities?
Well, we have a long way to go. We've made a very good start in starting to change the direction of the county, but frankly, there's a lot more to do. It's going to take a lot longer, and I hope to do that in my full first 4-year term. The first thing that we need to do is consider some long-term land use reform. We've been working on this and trying to preserve open space in the county. I've been working together with the Park Authority. I've been working together with the Planning Commission. I see several of our Planning Commissioners here tonight, including Martha Henley and Gary Friedman. We've been working all together on this open space plan, and frankly, it wasn't until I was elected chairman that it finally got jump-started. Now, the community, we also created a citizens community to work with the Planning Commission, to work with the Park Authority on this. We continue to work on it. But I think that there's at last, we've been able to build that bridge between all of those groups, and we have some agreement. Now, unfortunately, by a vote of 6-2 on Wednesday morning, I guess it was deferred. Now, that gives us some more time in November and December to work out a consensus with the Board of County Supervisors. But remember this, on every major topic, from the budget to the zoning moratorium, to illegal immigration, I've been able to take what has been a diverse and disparate board and bring them together and not only get a majority of the votes on that board for these reforms, but to get unanimous votes on every major piece of legislation that I brought up in front of the Board of County Supervisors. So long-term land use reform has got to be the top priority for this board. Transportation is second. We have transportation impact fees. We've got the authority to do that. But now what we need to do is get that implemented. We've hired an outside consultant, and because of that, it looks like we're going to be the very first ones out of the gate in getting transportation impact fees assessed to development. And finally, I think we need to go through and enforce our illegal immigration reform. Thank you very much.
Ms. Pandak, 2 minutes to discuss your top 3 priorities as chairman, how you'd work with your colleagues on the board to accomplish them. 2 minutes.
I intend to use my leadership capabilities in order to work cooperatively and closely in bringing the priorities that I have to the forefront. As county attorney, I was appointed by a largely Democratic board. I then served under a largely Republican board, both incredibly successfully, and when I left, people didn't know which party I was. I've worked across party lines for a very long time in the General Assembly and also on congressional legislation. I will use that to deal with what I think is the first primary problem in this county, and that is traffic gridlock. And we have made some strides because of work of previous boards of supervisors in building roads. But the chairman didn't vote for a budget until this year, so it's very difficult for him to claim ownership of those successes. Governor Kane had to call him and ask him about House Bill 3202, which set new taxes on county taxpayers. He didn't come to it voluntarily. And if you don't believe it, ask his anti-tax friends. I believe we also need to work to deal with out-of-control growth, and we can do that. I have worked for many years in order to make the foundations available that are there now in the General Assembly for dealing with issues of out-of-control growth. And we can do that, and we can do it locally. But you don't do it by doing a moratorium. Sure, you get a unanimous vote when it doesn't do anything. Under Virginia law, there's a year to approve or deny a zoning violation, and this moratorium ends on December 31st, conveniently after the election. Mr. Chairman, when you look at your unanimous votes, try to figure out what they really mean. We need to move forward not only on open space and out-of-control growth, we need to move forward on our budget, and we're going to have a huge task in establishing credibility on that. The foundation for our current budget is not a good one. We've had massive swings in tax rates over the last several years. This year, instead of taking some progressive steps when our citizens needed and said they were willing to pay for services, the board gave what amounted to the cost of 2 pizzas as a tax cut, and yet didn't pay for the schools and police officers that were necessary.
1 minute per candidate for rebuttal. Mr. Stewart, you first.
Well, Ms. Pandak, the problem you've got, if you don't want to decrease the tax rate when assessments are skyrocketing, the result is very simple: huge tax increases. That would have been the result. Now, let me ask you this. Let's assume that we had left the tax rate where it was while your assessments were skyrocketing for the last 7 years. Your tax bills would have gone enormously, even more than they actually did. And do you think that do you really think the county government would have saved that money for a rainy day? They would have spent it. That would have been a terrible thing to do. And we would be in a much worse situation today if we hadn't done that. What we did last year when we faced a fiscal crisis was to scour the budget. After years of significant increases in county revenues and county spending, I believed, and I turned out to be correct, that there was room for savings. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, scouring the county budget really doesn't mean a whole lot because there's nothing left to scour unless it's the $31,000 you used to send out a postcard with our taxpayers' money. There clearly was enough money that the $18 million that you said you saved during the main year was put back into the budget. It's carryover. What we've got to do is be able to put the budget in a position to nudge it, not have massive swings which send a sense of instability both to our residents and to our citizens. And yes, Mr. Chairman, you've already told people there's going to be at least a double-digit tax rate this increase this year. And we have not made a lot of progress. When we get to those swings again, because of poor thinking in the interim years, when we need to make sure that we've got the funds there to build our infrastructure so that we don't pay those hidden taxes, which is the 3 hours we spend in commuting, the time our children are in schools when they can't move around because it's overcrowded. Those are hidden taxes. We need to address that.
Stay at the podium if you would, ma'am, and we'll get to question number 2 from the public. It's as follows. Between 2000 and 2006, the average homeowner's county tax bill rose by 60 to 70%. What are your plans? What are your plans now that home values are decreasing to reduce county spending and give county taxpayers a break by significantly decreasing the average homeowner's county tax bill?
I'm going to say the unpopular thing. The current loss in tax revenue that is coming in is due to a loan crisis. The situation we are in right now, budgetary-wise, is we have increasing number of people in this county with an increasing demand for services, with public infrastructure that is behind in terms of being constructed. And we're going to have to look at raising the tax rate again. That doesn't mean necessarily that people's taxes are going to go up. It doesn't mean that at all, but we've got to look at it. And how do you do that in a responsible way? You sit down and you put the information on what costs are before the public for specific items. You don't send a message to the county executive to cut everybody's budget by a certain percentage, so you don't have to make those hard decisions personally. You then put all the revenue sources available, and I am committed to going to Capitol Hill, both at the General Assembly and at the federal government level, and pursuing new revenue sources, and I believe those are available. After you do all of that, you figure out what it's going to cost, and you tell the people what it's going to cost. And then you allow them to have input. You don't say you only get one public hearing because it's not the issue you care about, and you don't want to sit there like what happened this year with the chairman. You don't say to the school board, we won't allow you to come in and talk to us unless it's at citizens' time. You are open with the members of the community. You are open with the various entities of county government. You put that information out before the taxpayers, and you get their guidance on what is going to be an appropriate tax rate and burden into the future.
Mr. Stewart, 2 minutes on the question about your plans for reducing spending so homeowners can get a break on their county tax bill.
Well, let me tell you something. In previous years, when John Stirrup and I led the fight to try to reduce spending and decrease tax bills, at least stop the increases, people would say, well, where do you cut? What are you going to cut? You got a budget about that thick. It's very general. If we asked for the full copy of the budget, it would come back, it'd be several volumes tall. It's almost impossible to go through and nickel and dime that budget to find the savings that way from the 70,000 foot level. So what did we do? Soon after I became chairman, we came up with a strategy, and that was this. We asked the county executive's office to prepare a budget based at the flat tax rate level. Now, with assessments declining, that meant a reduction in revenues. Now, there was a lot of complaining and whining. But what happened? They were forced to go through their own budgets and find the savings. And I thought that was fiscal responsibility. And what was the result? A unanimous vote. A unanimous vote. It wasn't just me. It wasn't just the Republicans on the board. It was your Democratic colleagues as well who also voted for that same guidance. And then when it came time to pass the budget, what did we get? We got, for the first time in many years, in memory actually, a flat tax bill, because we forced staff to scour their budgets and find the savings. I intend to do the same thing this year as well. And that's how we're going to do it. I think it's the job of every government to be fiscally conservative, and before they ask the taxpayers for more of their money, we need to look at our own spending habits and find out where we can achieve savings. Thank you.
A 1 minute rebuttal, Ms. Panday.
I've always believed that government should be fiscally conservative. I believe that taxes should be well spent. My husband Bob, who is here, and I have no children. We have no dependency on the social services system. We probably pay more taxes per person than most people in the county. But I am committed to doing those things that we need to do to prepare us for the future. And we cannot bring economic development in this county and grow our own businesses if we fail to have infrastructure that takes care of our needs. The chairman refused to vote and did not support the referendum in 2002 that it was a statewide referendum. And so what do we get this year? Far less money from the state than we can possibly ever consider in terms of being able to fix our transportation issues. And we're able to build with that less road at more cost, because the cost of asphalt's gone up, the cost of steel, other costs go up. Unless you plan and pay at the time that it's necessary for infrastructure, all of us as taxpayers are going to pay a lot more into the future, and I'll be on more of a fixed income then.
A 1-minute rebuttal for you, Mr. Stewart, to wrap up this question.
Well, in case Ms. Pandak didn't know, the sales tax referendum wasn't just defeated, it was resoundingly defeated. 64% it was defeated. You know what was wrong with that sales tax referendum? Is that the money would have gone down to rich. We would never have known for sure whether that money would have been spent in Northern Virginia. No projects were specifically listed. In fact, what they gave us was a whole list of projects that they were going to spend it on. And there were no guarantees that the money that was going to be spent in Northern Virginia from those proceeds would have been displaced and moved southward to the rest of Virginia. You don't think it would happen? It's happening right now. Northern Virginia produces 40% of the state's revenue, but only receives 17% of state highway construction funds. No, I don't trust Richmond. And I don't trust any government with my money. That's why I think it's careful. We need to be careful to make sure that every time we pass a bond, every time we're raising revenues, that a specific project is listed for those revenues.
Stay at the podium if you would, Mr. Chairman, and we'll go to question 3. You'll get the first crack at it, 2 minutes. Question: do you support the current revenue sharing agreement between the Board of Supervisors and the school board? Would you make any changes?
I do support the current revenue sharing agreement with the school board. And one thing I got to tell you is if that revenue sharing agreement is good in good times, it needs to be good in the difficult times as well. We all have needs. The schools have needs. But these are difficult times, and we all have to scour our budgets. And the fact is that when we have overcrowded schools, what is the cause for overcrowded schools? I'm going to tell you. It was runaway development. We let developers get away with murder. We let them build subdivision after subdivision after subdivision without adequate roads. We let them build subdivision after subdivision without adequate school infrastructure. And today we are paying the price of letting developers get away with all of that overdevelopment for all of those years. And before she blames school crowding on me or this current budget, the reality is that we are living with a legacy of the failure to control development by a board that was frankly controlled by Democrats. And the other thing I will say is that Kettle Run High School and Kettle Run Elementary School, these aren't fiscal problems. This is a problem with debt capacity. The county is up against it. We can't spend more on those schools until we have increased debt capacity. And we've had to push that back a little bit further. Spending more and giving more to the schools this year would not have changed that problem. And that's why it's important that we continue to not only discipline ourselves on important needs, transportation, education, and public safety, but we make sure that the schools are spending most of their money also on teacher retention, but also capital improvements.
Ms. Pandak, 2 minutes. Do you support the current revenue sharing agreement between the supervisors and the school board? Would you make any changes?
I do support the current plan between the school board and the Board of Supervisors. It's a 5-year plan, and the processes in that, if not the numbers, are ones that are very useful and have made us a unique county in the state of Virginia. It's one in which we have not had what I would consider sometimes petty battles between elected boards each year. The chairman this year destroyed that cooperation with the schools by the way he handled the budget process. He destroyed a relationship that has been built up over many years. That doesn't mean we don't have issues. It doesn't mean we don't have to work closely with the school board to make sure that what they are offering in terms of a budget is appropriate. But the process was one that worked. And when you tell the school board that the only time you will talk to them before you advertise the tax rate, a key issue in the budget process, is at citizens' time, that's sending a terrible message about fiscal irresponsibility. When there's a cooperative arrangement by which the school board chairman and vice chairman have met periodically over the years in order to discuss problems with the Board of Supervisors, and you say you won't do that anymore, that's fiscal irresponsibility. When you say that you are scouring and there is so much waste in the budget and you have been on the Board of Supervisors for 4 years, you should have figured out where the holes were. When you are telling me that previous boards approved development and you look at the last 8 years of Republican domination on the board, and I'm not going to fault the Republicans any more than the Democrats, but there's equal fault there for our problems with out-of-control growth, and it hasn't been fixed. I have never voted for a residential project. I've never voted for a rezoning. I've never had the opportunity to scour. But I am committed to restoring that relationship with the school board so that we can demonstrate to our citizens and to the world that we are fiscally responsible.
1 minute rebuttal, Mr. Stewart.
The real problem for all of this has started when we began allowing, when you were county attorney, development without adequate schools, without adequate road infrastructure. And when you developed the proffers back in the late 1990s, the one thing that was kind of interesting that you put in there when you were county attorney was to allow developers to set the proffer levels, these contributions that they make at the time of application. Well, they started an interesting game, didn't they? They would submit their application well before it was completely prepared. They would bring in their proffer levels at a very low level. And when the development was finally approved and was finally built, what the developers paid back to the county was peanuts compared to the cost of the infrastructure needed to support that development. And what is the result? That you pay, that we all pay as taxpayers. When the developers don't pay, we all pay, and that's what's been happening.
1 minute, Ms. Penduck.
Mr. Stewart, I think you should learn under local government law in Virginia, the county attorney does not make decisions. But I will make a point here because I think it's useful to remember back to the late 90s when this county adopted what was a watershed process in terms of proffer guidelines and linking land use, public infrastructure together. And those guidelines have been periodically updated over the years, and unfortunately you didn't get a unanimous vote to increase them again, as they have been indicated by staff deserve to be increased. In fact, it was deferred. But what I did in the late 90s was make sure that what the board did was not subject to legal challenge, and that was hugely successful. And since that time, the board's learned an awful lot about proffers. They've learned they've had to keep up with the cost of living and with the cost and expenses of building infrastructure. Mistakes were made in the past. I'm committed as chairman of the Board of County Supervisors to bringing us into the future.
Stay at the podium if you would, and you can kick off the fourth question. It has been estimated that it will cost the county $14.2 million over the next 5 years to pay for the new crackdown on illegal immigrants. Given the downturn in real estate values and the budget crunch we face, how will you pay for the cost of this new program? By raising taxes, cutting services, or both?
I didn't establish that program. I am opposed to illegal immigration. I believe we should do things efficiently in order to address the problem with illegal immigration, which has caused impacts in this community. I'm committed to the ICE program at the jail, but I think it is foolhardy to go into a program that the chief of police has recommended against, where we will stop citizens for traffic violations to determine whether or not they're illegal. And that's going to be costly. We already have one lawsuit. We will have more in terms of racial profiling, no matter how well trained our police department is. $14.2 million is a lot of money. It is a lot of money to commit to out of turn from the budget, which is what the chairman did, notwithstanding the concerns indicated to him by the county executive. And if we want to talk about spending like drunken sailors, which the chairman likes to use that term, when the issue came up and the county executive said, no, there's not enough money in the budget this year to cover that program, the chairman could have cared less and moved on. Fiscal responsibility is dealing with important and critical issues in ways that are fiscally responsible. Illegal immigration is one of those issues. I am committed to going to the federal government and making sure that they give us money to deal with those impacts and to deal with enforcement. But my federal tax dollars are paying for immigration enforcement. And I want to be very careful that my local tax dollars aren't paying for exactly the same things. In order to stop illegal immigration, we've got to stop it at the source. And the source is to find those employers in significant ways who bring illegal immigrants into this country. Unless you do that, you are treading water because they're going to keep coming. We need to deal with that. We need to devote resources to dealing with our communities and the issues there with respect to overcrowding, gang violence, all of the issues of zoning enforcement. We can do that. It's a commitment.
$14.2 million estimated over 5 years to fund the crackdown on illegal immigrants. How would you pay for that?
Thank you. Well, first of all, I want to thank my opponent for finally telling us where she stands on the resolution that was implemented on Tuesday night. She's against it. And I'm glad that she's finally clarified that. How can we afford $14.2 million over 5 years? Let me ask you this. How can we afford not to? Illegal immigration is destroying the quality of life in this community. I believe it is the #1 issue that we are facing in the county. This issue didn't come from Corey Stewart. It didn't come from John Stirrup. It came from you in your communities when you saw overcrowded homes. It came from you when you went to the hospital emergency room with your mother and you had to wait 4.5 hours while she had a broken arm because other people were there, illegal immigrants trying to get routine medical care. It came from you when you went into the schools and you realized that the schools, that the ESOL population had increased 280% over 5 years. And you have crowded classrooms. It came from you. And that's why we're addressing this problem. $2.5 million per year and an overall budget of $2 billion is not going to break the bank. Not funding this program is not going to solve our fiscal issues that we have in communities all across the country. $2.5 million for increased public safety, for putting one third of the gang members in Northern Virginia behind bars and deporting them afterward. That's a small price to pay. Now we're going to work out the long-term way to finance this in the upcoming budget process. Mr. Jenkins and I will be working on that together. This year we're going to, if necessary, we might have to take it out of the contingency reserve. But it must be done. And that is the resolution that was passed on Wednesday morning. And that is the resolution that I'm committed to and will fight like hell to get implemented and enforced.
1 minute rebuttal for each candidate, starting with Ms. Pandek.
If it was so important, it should have been in last year's budget. There wasn't a whisper about it. And Mr. Chairman, I hope you've read that resolution. And also, I've spoken at citizens' time over and over again, and it's apparent that maybe even after 12 hours you don't listen to people. But I have been committed to dealing with illegal immigration. I have supported the ICE program. I have said that we must get the feds to build a jail for these people being deported because otherwise they're stuck in our jail and we're already overcrowded. I have been opposed to the summons issue because I do not think that's meaningful to expect that illegals are going to go out and violate traffic regulations so that they can get picked up and deported. The 8 services that you cut are not significant. In fact, if every alien in the county used those services and you multiplied that out, the cost you're going to pay to cut them and to provide these other programs would still be 3 times as expensive. We've got a problem. We've got to deal with it at the federal level. We've got to deal with it with the employers. I am pleased the resolution finally includes dealing with it at the business license stage, which I asked to be included, and it only showed up after I addressed the issue. It seems to happen with a number of items, Mr. Chairman, that finally show up in your resolutions. It's a critical issue, but we need to consider it as part of the entire budget process. Thank you.
Mr. Stewart, the last rebuttal is yours.
A few short months ago, a gentleman, I hate to call him that, committed an assault in Prince William County. He was brought to our jail. He was released on bond, and 2 weeks later, he murdered a Prince William County resident. When he was brought back to jail, it turns out he had been twice deported. If his immigration status had been checked at the time that he was brought into the jail, he would not have been released, and he would not have committed that murder against a Prince William County resident. That program is now implemented, it is now in place, and every single person who is brought into our jail is checked for immigration status. And if they are in fact an illegal alien, an immigration detainer is placed upon them, they will not be released, they will not go back into the community and damage you or your property. That's real effectiveness. That's getting something done. That's improving public safety.
Stay at the podium if you would, Mr. Stewart, and we'll go to question 5. Transportation. What are your plans for integrating Prince William County into regional transportation systems, such as Metro to Prince William and bus rapid transit?
Well, thank you.
2 minutes, please.
First of all, everybody would like to get Metro. I'd love to get Metro down to Prince William County. Do you think that's going to happen in our lifetimes? The reality is no. In fact, it can't. If we were to somehow enter into the Metro Compact, we have to inherit a portion of that debt. We don't even have the debt capacity, even if we wanted to assume part of that debt. We can begin and maybe take some long-term thinking about bringing Metro down the 95 corridor, etc. That's not going to solve our long-term transportation needs. What we need to do is continue to work on the extension of VRE to Gainesville and to Haymarket. We need to take a look at BRT, bus rapid transit, along the Route 1 corridor, which will not only help with the transportation solution, especially to Fort Belvoir and especially to Springfield Metro Station, but would also help to enhance and improve the Route 1 corridor. So we need to continue those types of efforts. We also, on a regional basis, there's one thing you need to remember. It sure would be nice to get a little help from the region. But the problem is Prince William County is the only county in the whole Commonwealth that's got its own road building program. In fact, the citizens here, people here tonight, approved that by a margin of approximately 80% in last year's road bond. We need to continue to do that. But we do need for Fairfax and Loudoun and Arlington and Alexandria to step up the plate and do what we've done. And that is build our own roads, because we know it's never going to come from the state.
Ms. Pandak, integrating Prince William into the regional transportation systems. 2 minutes.
There's no question that we need to integrate Prince William into the regional system, and we need to be more of a part of the region in terms of discussion and policy making. That hasn't been the case over the last 10 months. I believe we can bring Metro down to Prince William, because with the base relocation work that is going on at Belvoir and then at Quantico, it will become pretty clear pretty quickly that just because there's special people that are there to protect our national security, they're going to get stuck in the same traffic, and they can't really protect us if they can't get to work. We can extend VRE to Gainesville, and we need to take it farther out west so that those citizens coming in from Fauquier aren't clogging up our roads. They don't have any interest in using our business at 5, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. We can extend it south down to Spotsylvania, and we need to do that. And in order to make that happen and improve and have regular, consistent VRE service, not just in the morning, but in the evening, we're going to have to work with the federal government to yank the chains of the railroads that are causing this to not be able to move forward in that regard. And I've worked with the federal government before, and I'm committed to doing that. In the interim, we can use bus rapid transit, and that is another regional effort as an interim until we get to Metro, which is more expensive in terms of infrastructure. But we also need to look at creative ways that other countries use and public-private partnerships, not the hot lanes, which are simply a Band-Aid approach to saying we're going to get mass transportation when in fact it's going to hurt our HOV and it's going to hurt our sluggers. But we need to use our clout with the General Assembly as the second largest county, as the seventh wealthiest county. We haven't used our clout. In fact, we've diminished our clout and our stature. I'm committed to going forward so we can make those important regional transportation projects work. And if we do, we will have a more viable economy in addition to a much less stressed population.
1 minute to rebut, Mr. Stewart.
Well, I'm going to tell you something right now. If you continue to build and build and build more and more houses, you're never going to catch up. You're never going to catch up with our infrastructure needs. The reality is that 60% of you, how many of you work in further up north in Northern Virginia or Washington, D.C.? The reality is 60% of the Prince William County workforce works in either Tyson's Corner or the Pentagon or Washington, D.C. or other places further north. And until we slow down our development, until we're able to build more office space here, until we're able to bring more jobs here so that people don't leave the county, and until we fix that situation and slow down development as we've done this year, and we need to continue to work on those efforts for long-term reform to keep residential development down while we encourage more commercial development. And at the end of the day, that's why the transportation problem will get better. But it first comes and starts with our own land use policies.
A 1 minute rebuttal for you, Ms. Pender.
Mr. Chairman, I think maybe you missed the national news. The slowdown in development this year is due to the loan crisis. It's not due to a sham moratorium. You had at least 3 years before this year to slow down development. You couldn't get a consensus on the board. In fact, you voted no on decisions, and then you showed up at the groundbreaking. Rivergate, which is hundreds of new homes over near 123. You were there smiling at the groundbreaking and talking about what a wonderful project it was. But oh, it was good to say you voted against it at the time that it occurred. You say that the county needs to quit building residential development. As I said, I haven't participated in approving any residential development, and you've approved quite a few over the years, if you count other than this year. You're talking to yourself. You need to keep track and you need to keep score. I am committed to dealing with out-of-control development. I'm committing to taking care of that inventory of 27,000 homes that you didn't even want to do an inventory on, that are not yet built, but can be built. But I'm not going to send a message that Prince William County is closed for business, because then we hurt our economic future. And that's the message you sent with the moratorium.
Stay at the podium if you would, ma'am, and we'll get to that part of the program where the candidates question each other. There's actually a limit on the question. You have a minute to ask your question, and then the person on the receiving end will have 3 minutes to respond, and you each get to toss one at the other. We'll start, as I say, with Ms. Pandek, a minute to ask Mr. Stewart a question.
Thank you. Corey, last year you pledged that we should read your lips, no new taxes. You then took credit for House Bill 3202, which included the hated abuser fees and the NVTA's 7 new taxes. You then voted in favor of enacting those taxes in Prince William County. Your so-called tax relief was a measly $20 for an average middle-class family over an entire year. Last fall, you labeled the other board members, including fellow Republicans, as spending like drunken sailors. You were then quoted later this year that saying former Chairman Connaughton was right. You know, you were right. You also said you enjoyed being a supervisor, throwing out a firebomb, laughing, and leaving. You clearly broke your no tax pledge and apparently are now endorsing your predecessor's free spending ways, or in your own words, spending like a drunken sailor. Now tell Prince William County residents how many postcards you're going to send to play more fiscal games with Prince William's future.
3 minutes.
Well, I'm going to tell you, Sharon, 3 minutes is good. The problem with this government, and frankly the problem when Sharon was county attorney, is that it's been operating in the dark. Things have been happening. People don't know exactly what's going on with their government. They haven't been. When you set that proffer policy and allowed developers to to essentially set their profit levels way down low, so that by the time they built their housing development, and then they paid profits that were just a fraction of what the actual cost of the county. I'm putting an end to that. And you know what? I would have been able to put an end to that if your colleagues on the board had voted for it. But they didn't. Your allies on the board voted against the increase in the proffers. Now let's talk about House Bill 3202. The reality is this board, and I in particular, didn't support that bill. We didn't take a vote in favor of that bill. In fact, over the summer, I tried working to get enough members of other jurisdictions to vote against it. For it to pass, to actually to kill the bill, to kill the tax increase, would have required 4 jurisdictions to vote against it. I was able to get 3. Prince William, Loudoun, and Manassas Park. I couldn't get the 4th. In fact, the day before the vote was about to be taken on the NVTA, it was very clear that actually Manassas voted in favor, that they were going to vote in favor of 3202 assessing all those fees. So I'm not very happy about it. The reality is that's what it is, and I think probably the best thing that I've done is to leave Mr. Noe on the NVTA to represent us. He's doing a fine job, and if we can't stop the tax increase, at least what he is doing is trying to make sure that we get our fair share out of that. Now, I'm not quite sure which it is. Are you criticizing me for being stingy with taxes and trying to cut everything back? Or are you accusing me of being a profligate spender? I'm not sure what it is. And I'm a little bit confused, frankly. But I think fiscal responsibility is cutting back on costs and difficult times, and that's what I've done in last year's budget. It was the first flat tax bill that people had received in memory.
Mr. Stewart, you have a minute to pose a question to Ms. Pandak.
Well, Ms. Pandak, I have one question for you. How much money was filtered from the development community, including IDI and Giviana Checchi, the development that I voted against, was filtered through the Democratic Party of Virginia to you in last year's election?
Mr. Chairman, it really is truly interesting that you would raise the issue of campaign contributions when the percentage of contributions that you have taken this year are more than I have taken. And when last year, the amount of contributions that you took from the development community were about the same as the amount of contributions that I took from the development community. I don't know why you showed up at Rivergate. Maybe you were there like you were going around the county over the last several months asking residential developers for money for your campaign. And then when they said no, accusing them as being greedy developers. I can't understand that. That's a hypocrisy that I cannot understand. But it's one you want to perpetuate as a myth as you try to smear me. And you admitted when you spoke to the Post on the day you were elected last year that you had no foundation for what you were claiming about developers' contributions and yours versus mine. That is a smear. It is preposterous you would try to perpetuate that. I received money from the Democratic Party last year. I don't know who contributed to the Democratic Party to help me, and I don't know what money Governor Kane included in that. But I will tell you, yes, I've taken money from developers this year. And let me tell you why I've taken money from developers. They came to me and they said, we need somebody we can trust. And I said, don't come to me. I don't agree with you on most things. And they said to me, Sharon, you at least will meet with us, and we won't have to wait an hour cooling our heels or have the chairman send Gary Friedman out to talk with us when we want to talk to you. That's not the way you do business. And we know, Sharon, from your experience and our experience with you as county attorney, we didn't like a whole lot of what you did. And yes, you represented the board very vigorously in litigation against us. And yes, you went down to the General Assembly and worked for adequate public facilities. But Sharon, we know that you'll tell us what you think. And I said, I'm sorry. At best, I've got to be the best of two bad solutions for you. And I said, I'm going to take your money because I know that Corey Stewart's going to smear me again. And I care about this county. I am only running for this office because Corey Stewart is chairman. I only ran last year because I knew what he would be like, and it has come to be the truth. I'm not headed to be governor. I'm not headed to be congressman. I am a small businesswoman in Prince William County. I'm a practicing lawyer. I represent local governments all over this Commonwealth, and you're not going to do that to my county.
Time for closing statements. We'll give each candidate 3 minutes for a closing statement. Mr. Stewart, you're first.
Thank you very much. Well, Ms. Pandak, it's very interesting that you should bring up IDI, which is owned by Giovanni Cecchi and his family, because I was the only vote against those 700 apartment buildings on Route 1. Why? Because it was crowding Route 1. We've had so much high-density multifamily development. And guess what happened last year? And now it should be coming around to you and is being handed out. Ms. Pandak said I had no proof back then that she was taking money and filtering it through, developer money through the DPV. On one single day, last October 10th, Ms. Pandak, actually IDI Cecchi, whose development I voted against, and who threatened to give Ms. Pandak $50,000, on October 10th, Mr. Cecchi and his family, and the evidence is coming around to you, gave $50,000 to the Democratic Party of Virginia. One day later, the Democratic Party of Virginia turned around and financed multiple mailings for Ms. Pandak. The proof is in the pudding. And not only that, but it's kind of funny that you should say that I smeared her for taking developer money, so to counteract that, she's going to take more developer money. Does that make any sense? It doesn't to me. Ladies and gentlemen, at the end of the day, I think it's important that you have somebody that represents your interests. And that's what I've done. In 11 short months, we've taken on some of the most grueling, tough, frustrating problems that this county's been facing for a long time. We've been trying to get impact fees for years, and it was achieved. We've been trying to get a control of runaway development, and it was achieved. We were faced with a massive hole in our budget, and it was fixed. You had been plagued by tax increase after tax increase, and it was stopped. You told me about the problem with illegal immigration in the community and how it was deteriorating your quality of life, and we addressed it. And why are we getting national attention for this? Because we're national leaders, and what a locality can do to crack down on illegal immigration. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not the cost of the crackdown that counts. It's the cost of what we do if we do nothing. We cannot stick our heads in the sand. We must address the problem, and that's what I like to do. Thank you.
I really look forward to seeing that flyer, and I think I better call up Mr. Cecchi tomorrow and tell him thank you. Mr. Cecchi is a Republican. Mr. Cecchi is a prominent Republican who is funding prominent Republican presidential candidates. I don't know why he wants to give me money. I will tell you, I have never voted for a rezoning. I have never made any promise to do anything more than represent the best interests of this county. And you know what? If I get elected this fall, I don't care if I ever get elected again. I am running for the best interests of this county. I don't need this job. I am a successful attorney. I am known throughout this Commonwealth. When I call public officials, the governor, others, they answer my call. And that's what this county should have as the second largest county in this Commonwealth. They shouldn't have people going up to Congress and not following the script that they had worked out with the Board of Supervisors, blathering and not even dealing and asking for money to deal with our healthcare system and with our school overcrowding, which we can't deal with locally. It's a federal issue. But no, the chairman missed that in his glory days with CNN. And what did we get out of that? A flash in the pan. I got congressional legislation that helped move police and fire across state lines in the wake of 9/11 and the sniper shootings. And I got that by working with other localities, with FEMA, with the Department of Homeland Security, with the Office of the President, and yes, with the Office of Management and Budget. I did that. I know how to get things done. I will work with the development community to get them contribute more to this community. They've never given me a personal penny, and I won't take one. But I'm here to tell you that we need to change in Prince William. We cannot go about having ourselves all over national and international news as a county that is a hate monger because we crack down instead of enforce the law and bring about unity in our communities. We have a German company that is doing economic development in Prince William County. What message do we send if we don't want to deal with ethnic people who are here legally? To borrow a line from the movie The American President, the president looks into the camera and he tells his opponent that these are serious times that call for serious people, and his opponent's 15 minutes are up. With your help, Republicans and Democrats, Corey Stewart's 15 minutes are going to be up, and we're going to make positive progress into this future together.